Well, originally from down under Australia, Rick Springfield has finally come into some well-deserved recognition for efforts that he has put in both as a musician as well as an actor. Now, his latest album, Working Class Dog, just gone platinum, features the smash hit Jesse's Girl, and some know him as Dr. Noah Drake of General Hospital, but here on MTV we know him as Rick Springfield. And welcome to MTV, Rick.
Thank you very much. Let me just take a drink from my tea here.
Oh, please do. MTV cut. Most of the audience that is familiar with Jesse's Girl, to a lot of people that is your first big hit, but you've been playing rock and roll for a long time. How did you get into music?
I was into music when I was about 12, 13, when I got my first guitar, you know the old story. Except I sawed mine in half as soon as I got it, so that's not quite...
You sawed it in half?
Yeah.
Why?
Well, see, at the time, the Shadows were the big band to me. It was just before the Beatles came out, and I used to cut out cardboard guitars, but they're all red. They're like all Fenders. They were red and they were real thin. So I got this big boxy guitar. So I thought it wasn't too cool. So I sawed it in half, like lengthwise, to make it thinner, to try and make it look a little cooler. But
did it sound like
no,
anything?
It didn't really work very well after that. So my parents made me save up and buy my own after that. But I was in high school bands and it was a mutual decision, but I left school, was asked to leave school because I paid more attention to the bands and to music than I did to my schoolwork. Not really believing that there was much value in learning the precipitation in South Africa at a certain time of the year. So I went into band. I had a chance to go into to join this professional band that was playing like all the time, and I could have made money, or go back to school, and it was like the decision. It was when I had to actually stand up and say what I wanted to do, you know, whether I was just going to play with it or whether I was going to be serious about it. So I decided to go with the band and started working then. I was about 17.
And was that the band that brought Speak to the Sky to the charts?
No, Speak to the Sky didn't come until I was 20.
Which was a big hit for you.
Yeah. In Australia it was like #1. Over here it was like top 20, I think it was. It was I was in a band in Australia, one of the top bands in Australia called Zoot, which Beeb Birtles from Little River Band was also in. And we were one of the top bands over there, and then we split up, and I had the solo single, Speak to the Sky, which was the first thing I'd done on my own. And that was a hit over there, and that got me to deal with Capitol Records over here in 1972, and I came over on that.
Now, this is 1981.
Took a long time. If I'd known it had taken this long, I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah, well, what happened? What was the process with that? That's sort of a long follow-up.
Yeah, it was... Yes, it's a long follow-up. 72, I had an album out in Capitol called Beginnings, which has just been re-released which, strangely enough, Keith Olsen, who produced Jesse's Girl and who also produced my new album, it's going to be out in February, edited some of my first album together before he was like producing acts or anything. And that was on Columbia, on Capitol, and I started to get a lot of teen publicity. I mean, only teen publicity, and it hit before any of the music came out, and it was like, you know, the face and print the face, and you know he's cute, and don't worry about what else he does. And so it really hampered me musically, you know, and it was a real pain, and even then it was a real drag for me. And although the publicity at first was nice, but that got real old real fast. And it didn't do anything for the music, because the music, you know, the kids that were buying it eventually ended up buying it were expecting Cherish, you know, and a David Cassidy song, and I was singing, they were all basically ballads, big orchestrated ballads about, one was about suicide, another one was about a woman deciding to leave her husband because he was cheating on her, and what should she do with the kids and all this kind of thing, and it was not what they're after, so it didn't sell, and the teen magazines started to say, you know, give us a hit, we need the hit, with all this publicity we're giving them. So it took a big dive, which I'm very, looking back, was a very good thing. And so I never like attained the status that the other teen idols did, mainly because they had the music that the kids were looking for, and I didn't. And so I had a second album on Columbia called Comic Book Heroes, which took a real big nosedive, and that was it till like 1976. I separated from my managers and was out on my own.
And you also had problems, I understand, with getting a visa or the working visa here in the United States?
Right,
Or
yeah.
some
Well, that
problems
was
there?
cleared up by like '74, but that was a big problem. I couldn't tour or anything like that.
With all the process of all, you know, the albums and your publicity not being what you expected or what you wanted, was there ever a time that you thought you were just going to give up, forget about it?
I never really, I threatened it to myself, but only to drive myself, you know, and to say, you can't go back. I couldn't go back. I couldn't have gone back with my tail between my legs and said, you know, I blew it. And I was sitting in the Starwood, which is a club in L.A., and like about '74, and this guy looked over at me and said, "You're Rick Springfield, aren't you?" And yeah. And he goes, "You should have gone further. You were good." And I thought, and I said, "Geez, that's not it. There's more to come." You know, I felt, I knew then that wasn't it for me. And everybody else said, "Okay, he had his shot, he blew it." And it was real tough. It was a lot of times when, you know, you're sitting there alone at night in your apartment. That's what it comes down to, and, you know, and nothing's happening, and you're the one that's got to keep it going.
And then comes Dr. Noah Drake and an acting career.
God bless his little heart, yeah.
Well,
the
how
acting
did the
career,
acting come in at all?
acting, I'd always wanted to
happen?
do that. My brother started acting in Australia, and he got straight in like that. He's a really brilliant person, but he does whatever he wants to do, you know. Now I know he's on a farm somewhere in Australia. But he decided to act for a while, and he got in, and he was on like one of the main TV shows. And I remember sitting in the living room watching him on TV and saying, "Geez, that looks easy. I bet I could do that." So I'd always had it in the back of my mind, you know. And then I got into litigation about '74 with the managers that had brought me over here. And when I said, I'm going to drop the whole thing, you know, it's not working, the teen thing and everything, so I'm just going to drop it. And I didn't think it would take this long, but so I got into litigation, and then I started going to acting classes because I knew I had to keep the creativity going and something just happening and feel like I was making some kind of headway.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started going to classes, but I didn't start working until about '77, '76 when I got a contract deal with Universal Pictures.
You got a contract? What did you have professional, anything on your resume, or how did you
No,
arrive?
it was just this girl in this acting class I was going to. I'd finally, you know, we had enough. We couldn't. You go up for parts, you know, and I'm sure everybody who's gone up for anything like that, modeling or acting, it's always, what have you done? Even musicians, you know. I mean, even musicians, if you're trying out for a band or something, it's, well, who have you played with? You know, what do you? What have you done before? So it was always that. Yeah, and I didn't have an agent at the time either, so we just put on this, we got some money together and rented this dumb little theater in L.A., built the set ourselves and got like this one act and just the two of us and put it on and made up programs and sent them to every casting director and everybody in Hollywood, same old thing. Of course, nobody came, but one person did come from Universal, and they liked what they saw and they signed me to a contract.
And so what did that lead you to?
I'd started to do shows for Universal. Battlestar Galactica, I was in the pilot of Battlestar Galactica for a brief 20 minutes when I got blasted out of the sky. Did Rockford Files. I was like Kung Fu in the City in a very incredible Hulk. It was supposedly a pilot for a series. You know, he's a karate fighting cop. And you know, shows like that. A couple of Wonder Woman, $6 Million Man. Just basically cutting my teeth in TV.
Do you know karate?
Yeah, I have a brown belt in Taekwondo and Shotokan, which is a Korean and a Japanese style. So don't get me upset.
I'm watching
okay?
my step, for sure. How come you have no accent from Australia?
Well, I do. You just got to listen very carefully. It comes in and out, you know. It's very, yeah, right. My original accent was kind of a British-Australian cross, because the Australian accent is a very nasal sound, and it's like, you know, right through the nose sport. And mine was a kind of a cross. It was like a Cockney Australian cross, and it was a bit, I clipped my words a little more like that. I picked it up purely as a tool. I had my accent as up until about 4 years ago, complete. Had my tonal accent, and I figured if I was going to get into acting and to be competitive, because I was in America, that I had to have the accent. I had to have it available, and my music ear, learning music by ear, and you know, and I think I have a pretty good ear, helped me pick it up very fast.
I just want to sort of change shifts a little bit. I understand you performed in Vietnam for over there. What was that like?
Nothing I've ever done before, that's for sure. I mean, bottles are nothing when you've had rockets thrown at you.
Oh, how did that come about? And were you on the front? What, you know?
No, I was. They had entrepreneurs over in Vietnam, and they sent them out, you know, scattered around Australia and America for bands. I wanted to go over and entertain the troops, and the band I was in decided to go, and I decided to go along with them. I didn't really know much about it because Vietnam was not a big thing in Australia. At that time, it was like '68, and it was pretty much. I'm sure if I'd been in America, I probably wouldn't have gone, but I was pretty innocent of what was going on over there, and it was incredible. It was just incredible. I can't explain it. It was like, you know, we'd be playing on a stage and out somewhere in Vietnam, and suddenly the buzzer would go off and you'd hear thumps, and all the guys would dive under the table, and they'd say, you know, hit the bunkers, there's mortars coming in. And we'd be woken up in the middle of the night in our tents, and they'd say, you know, hustle us to the bunkers. And we did some crazy things. We went up on a couple of missions in some choppers, you know, and shooting rockets and the miniguns and everything, and stayed out in trenches one night. I mean, we could have got blasted any time. It was ignorance mainly, but the guys were fantastic. They were just wonderful. You know, they'd take us to after the show. They'd take us to the tents and show us the photos of their girls and their cars and play music. It was where I first heard Hair, and the Beatles' White Album, the double album.
Right,
and it was an incredible experience for me.
How did General Hospital come about?
That was just another acting call I went up on. As most actors know, you know, when you're doing guest spots here and there doesn't really, you know, you can go for a long time without working. I hadn't at that time. I just let's see. I got the record deal with RCA in '80, and I'd finished the album, Working Class Dog, and was waiting for that to come out. That was scheduled to come out in January, and about October, this call came out for this show, General Hospital, and you know, I said I hadn't worked for like 8 months as an actor, and I was really hurting money-wise, and I, you know, I went up for it just to read for it, because the idea is you go up and you read, and if you put on if they like you, if you don't want to do that part, maybe they'll want you for something else. And then I said, yeah, I started telling my friends, yeah, I was read for this part in the show called General Hospital, but you know, I don't think I want to do a soap opera. And they said, you're kidding, it's a great show, it's like the #1 show. So I started to look into it, because I thought, you know, I didn't know what doing a show that I thought was that little old ladies at home, gray-haired ladies with their tea and their cat watched, what that would do for me musically, you know. And then they started to say, well, it's a #1 show, and it's big in colleges, it's like a cult through the colleges, and it's you ought to look into it. So I looked into it and took a gamble and decided to do it.
How does that affect your musical career?
It gives me less time to tour, but what it did was it put me out there, and it made the record much more visible. The record had to have it to have got, you know, Jesse's Girl had to have had it in the record to have got to #1, but the show put it out there in the first place.
We were talking about this a little bit before, but how do you juggle? You know, you were here in New York last night performing, but you still have to go back, I assume, next week to
Wednesday, actually, yeah.
Do General
2 days
Hospital. And how do you have time to juggle all that? This is 2 full-time careers, for sure.
Yeah. Plus, it got really crazy about the last month, 2 months, because I was touring on the weekends. Because I worked like 2 or 3 days a week on the show on an average, which is real good. If I was doing a nighttime show, I'd work 5 days, and I don't know how I could tour then. But doing 2 or 3 days a week, I'd go out and tour. You know, we know we've always got the weekends free. Sometimes I got to really move it to get back the following week to do the show. But I was doing the second album, which is going to be out in February. I was recording that at night, doing the show during the day, and going out and touring on the weekend. And I frankly, I don't quite know how I did it, but I'm very pleased with the album, and that was the priority to me then. And I don't, if I feel like I'm not giving everything to what I'm doing at the time, I don't do it. You know, I'll pull back, I'll hold back, and rest a bit. But, you know, I was putting out, and now I got 2 weeks vacation coming up in January. I'm going to take it.
Oh, you are? You're not going to use it and go somewhere?
Go touring. I was tempted, because I'm a workaholic, and I love to do what I'm doing, and that's where I get my energy from, you know. But no.
When people see you on the street, do they say, it's Dr. Drake? Or do they say, look, it's Rick Springfield?